Good morning, everyone, to the Polk County Board of Commissioners board meeting for Tuesday, June 24th, 2025. All commissioners are present. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, next up is for comments for items not on the agenda. Okay, no one's here. Next up is approval of the agenda.
Also move.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, passed unanimously. Approval of minutes of June 17th.
I'll move approval.
Second that.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. I think I heard three.
Yes.
Yes, okay, thank you. Passed unanimously. Now we're up to IGA between the cities of Independence, Monmouth, and Polk County. Mr. Austin, please come forward.
Right. Thank you, gentlemen. As you're aware, I come in, did a little briefing a few weeks ago. And since then I can report that this IGA has been both before the City of Independence City Council and the City of Monmouth City Council, and both city councils have given their thumbs up to moving forward with the IGA agreement. So that's just the status of where we're at. I'll just quickly, for the record, sort of walk through what it is we're doing and sort of why. So Polk County has been interested in trying to stay ahead of projected water deficits throughout the county. And in the early 2000s, 2002-ish, we started to study the water demand and water supply in the county to look for a way to sort of project when we could start to have water deficiency issues. What we learned from that is that in the 50-year horizon from that time, we were looking at about a 25 cubic foot per second or 16 million gallon per day deficit. And so Polk County applied for a water right in 2007 on the Willamette River for the projected deficit from that study that we did in 2005. That permit expires in 2030. And so we have until 2030 in order to put that water to beneficial use, or we lose our permit. What we can do, though, is if we're making progress putting it to beneficial use, we could ask for an extension to that permit. And so we consulted with, we hired GSI in 2021 to look at doing a regional water supply. So the most efficient and best way to manage water is to manage water where you get an economy of scale, working with other jurisdictions and combining additional water rights. As you're aware, Independence and Monmouth both have water rights, and it was in Independence's master plan, but they hadn't really moved to looking at the Willamette to provide water, and the City of Monmouth did not have their Willamette water right in their water master plan. So we basically looked at the scenarios for the ability to use our water right to provide other water providers water in the future. And what we learned from that was that really the only way to do that is to work with Independence that was looking to pull water from the Willamette and utilize their input, their intake, to collect our water for future distribution. And we were uncertain at that time whether or not Independence and Monmouth and Dallas would want to cooperate in having a regional strategy for how we're going to utilize our water to be the most efficient and effective at addressing future deficits. And when we came out of that was that Dallas was wanting to pursue, or is interested in pursuing, expanding their water storage facility, but they hadn't written off the ability to participate in the future with Willamette water. And then Monmouth, they ended up coming back and moving forward now with they're going to amend their water master plan to take advantage of their water right. Their water right expires next year. And so if they don't put their water right on the Willamette to beneficial use or ask for an extension, they're going to lose it. And so they're motivated also to now participate in a regional water strategy. And Independence, well, we were in the middle of our 2020 in 2023, something like that, when we were doing our water study. the City of Independence decided that they were going to pursue the Willamette, and they've in fact even hired an engineering firm to start to do the planning for that, and that was the basis for the IGA. So when we finished that study in 2023, we weren't unable to finish or was it early 2024? We were unable to finish an IGA. And so, as you're aware, in October of 2024, Polk County procured GSI and Gable Houston again in order to work on completing an IGA with Independence and Monmouth and Polk County between us in order to evaluate a water intake on the Willamette that's sized for all of the regional water rights. So our water rights on the Willamette, plus our ability to purchase additional water from Adair, plus Independence's water right on the Willamette, plus Monmouth's water right on the Willamette. And what the IGA does is it essentially creates an opportunity for us to explore that. At this point, we don't know whether a rainy collector would be the best source or whether a direct intake on the Willamette. It's going to take some study and analysis in order to figure that out. And so it's sort of this cost share where we're all working together to share some of the cost at exploring what a regionally sized intake would look like. And then from that, we could either move to another phase in the future where we then start to do more of the environmental permitting and ask for an extension to our permit, which we wouldn't be able to get an extension to our permit without really completing phase one. So completing phase one would help create the odds that we're going to be able to preserve our permit. GSI believes that it would be sufficient to get an extension. We just can't ask for an extension to our permit until 1 year prior to the expiration of our permit. Phase two would do more of the environmental permitting. And then phases 3 and 4 really would focus on construction of the surface water treatment facility. And we're not really interested in being in the water business. So the direction that we're at right now is that we want to be able to make sure that we're maintaining this water right and that this water right can be made available to water providers in Polk County, and that this partnership is the best way that we found through our studies to basically preserve that ability and to be able to make it available. And so we really, after phase two, would probably have very little involvement. We could make our water right available to Monmouth and Independence. We haven't really even discussed what that would look like, but we really wouldn't have an interest in treating that water and investing in the surface water treatment facility and distributing the water. So we would make our water right available in some meaningful way at some point in the future is really the strategy where we're at today. And so in order to do this, we would really need to cooperate with the jurisdictions, and the IGA that we've prepared is our attempt to do that and to provide some certainty that we're going to work collaboratively, and how we're going to work collaboratively to create guidelines in terms of cost and what it is that we're going to be sharing costs on and what we're not going to share costs on, and an idea of what those costs actually are going to be. And those are highlighted in your Exhibit 1 that goes with that IGA. This Exhibit 1 would have the ability to change, but there would be a governance process that's set forth in the IGA that I'm sure you saw, where we have developed process that we agree to for how we're going to be able to make those changes. And the IGA includes a 10% contingency over what we're estimating those costs to be. So we had used GSI independently to basically review Independence's engineering proposal to sort of find where those additional costs for doing a regional intake would lie, and figuring out how we would equitably share those costs. And that's what has the ability to change a little bit. As you know, when you start to do work, things change. We're hoping that 10%, we're relatively certain that 10% contingency for phase one is going to be sufficient to be able to get us through that process. We're uncertain what some of the permitting stuff could involve and how that could change with changes in the federal government and delays and other things. So, I mean, there's some uncertainty just even in the permitting process stuff. But our permit wouldn't be extended until phase two. Their permits would be extended in the first phase, and we wouldn't be sharing any of those costs, of course, in the IGA. We make that's all very clear. But their permits would need to be extended before the end of 2026 when their permits expire. So that's really what the IGA does, what its intent is, really what the origin of this whole project is. This is really the culmination of decades of work that Polk County has done in order to help assure that we're going to have water in the future. So I'm open for any questions. My recommendation is that you approve the IGA with leaving some latitude for our legal counsel to make technical legal changes without changing the substantive matter of the IGA with the city attorneys in order to finalize a document that we would then bring back on a consent calendar.
So for the record, what is GSI?
GSI is a consulting firm that's based out of Corvallis that does water consulting. We've utilized GSI for decades to help assist and counsel us on our own water right, on our water master planning, all of those sorts of things.
And then also, what's the total investment of this project, roughly? If you don't have it, it's fine.
I think that, well, I mean, this is just like off the back of the napkin. We're probably about $500,000 over 25 years into studying water. Now, that's not Polk County General Fund money. And we applied for and obtained many grants from the Oregon Water Resources Department early on when we were studying our water needs. We then originally, what we had to do first was we had to look at what does the water demand and water supply look like out 50 years. And then we looked at what would be the best source of water. And we were looking at either water storage or the Willamette. And we spent a lot of time looking at water storage and looking at the Velsettes for the potential for doing an interbasin transfer from the Silettes to the Luckymute to provide water for Polk County. And what we found in those studies was that in order to avoid a fish take, we would have to essentially build 2 impoundments, 2 dams in order to manage that. And so that study essentially said that we should look at the Willamette. So then we studied looking at the Willamette more, and we had studies for that. And then we've studied how to regionally, is it feasible to regionally distribute water? And what would that look like, which is what we were doing in the early 2020s, which has brought us to today. So over all of those things, I would say we probably have a solid $500,000 invested into this project at this point.
Just want to voice my appreciation, Austin, for your leadership on this project. And Commissioner Pope's leadership, once we had that influx of federal money that, we could continue this investment that really started, as you said, a while ago. Have to give a shout out to those past commissioners who sought an alternative to that Velsettes project and secured this water right. So this is really good governance. Just a couple of clarifying questions. You mentioned phase 1, once that's completed, our permit would be preserved. And then I thought I heard that maybe it's phase 2.
It's phase 2 for us. So phase 1 would preserve, there will be permit extensions that would occur for Monmouth and Independence in phase 1. And because our permit it doesn't expire until 2030, we're unable to ask for an extension as part of phase 1. But we would know at the end of phase 1, if Monmouth and Independence got an extension, whether we would be able to utilize the work that was done in phase 1 to get an extension to ours in phase 2. So we would have that inside knowledge before we enter phase 2 in the future. But I do want to say that that in terms of the work for that, we also are going to have to move our permit from our permit locations. And so there's additional stuff that would have to happen at phase 2. And once we move our permit from our permit locations to a new location, we really wouldn't be able to move it again. And so phase 2 there would require quite a bit of discussion, but we would be much better informed at phase 2 after knowing what has occurred for those other 2 jurisdictions in phase 1.
And I've been tracking very lightly the legislation governing the movement of those. That's another conversation.
Yes,
can have.
there's a little bit of risk there, but.
Yeah. That's really helpful clarification. I appreciate that. And then I'm just sort of trying to anticipate scenarios. Let's say, obviously we're paying for this partly from our economic development funds. Let's say there's some other competing interest between after phase one and before phase two. And let's say the parties continue on with the project, which would be great. Would we have any sort of, would our involvement in the governance of phases 1 through 3 essentially be eliminated, or would be involved in, because we'd still be sharing the water right?
So we're not sharing our water right. Like, we get to
Yeah.
decide how we're going to do that. This is sharing the cost of studying a
Yeah.
regionally sized intake. That's phase one. So it's just determining whether it's feasible, what it would look like, what it's going to cost, what our environmental issues could be.
I guess my question is, if we're to exit after phase one in a hypothetical scenario, would we have it would be yet to be determined if we had a seat at the table at like construction and actual usage.
Yeah, I think we could renegotiate. I mean, the purpose, what the IGA does is it sort of creates this roadmap where we could pull off after phase one.
Right.
And then cut our commitment. We wouldn't at that point have extended our water right or moved the allocation point, right?
Right.
So we would still have maximum flexibility with our water right after phase one, and we would know whether or not a regional water intake is going to work for us. So what we don't know is what type it's going to be and those kinds of details. And those details are important for how we could utilize it. So if we don't like what comes out of phase one, we're still whole. We shared in the cost of looking at it, and then we'd be much better informed about what options we have with our water right after phase one. Phase two is where we would start to look at actual environmental permitting.
Yeah.
And that's where we would have these more hard costs rather than sort of analysis, right? So at phase two, we're really making that bigger commitment that this is what we're doing. Phase one is sort of like is a good ramp to get off. Is that answering your question?
Totally. It's super helpful. Yeah.
Phase three and phase four are really about constructing the actual treatment facility. And the idea being that Independence is willing to build a modular type facility where you could add treatment sleds to treat water. So they would size it so that you would be able to have treatment sleds to be able to treat all the water. And we're not really interested in participating in that, right? We could make our water available and another jurisdiction could treat it with their sled as kind of the philosophy that we've had up to this point. But these types of decisions could be made later and we could change our mind and participate in that if we chose. But that's not the intent at this point.
That's not, no. And we want those water users and ratepayers to be
Yes.
governing that. And so I'm in total support of moving this forward. But so the next questions I have are more logistical and I think need to be included in the IGA. But was there any discussion of sort of like planning out, recasting the net for other providers to come in some formal process, whether that's the project manager and partners presenting to Dallas and Luckemede, et cetera? Or is it sort of, hey, this is an open invitation, we'll talk about it at any time?
So we did have those conversations up to the point of negotiating the IGA.
Okay.
So really the time for those other parties to come to the table and share costs would be at the time that we do the IGA. So, who knows what their costs would be if they want to come to the table after we're all making significant financial investments in this project, that their costs later would be higher. And so at any phase, we could theoretically add another jurisdiction to this.
It's unanimous consent from the existing parties, and then you negotiate what that entrance would be.
You are well informed, sir.
Okay, and then, I'm sorry. And then just curious about scheduling the board updates. Obviously, each phase has its own projected timeline that could shift, but would love regular updates and perhaps even including the project manager in that so we can hear directly from.
Absolutely, yeah. As if you decide to enter into this agreement, it sort of creates these two categories. One is more of like a policy oversight, and then one is more technical. And I'm assuming that Commissioner Pope would continue to be involved in that more oversight role, and that Commissioner Pope and I could easily make presentations and bring the parties to have regular updates to the board, however this board chooses to do that.
Okay, so it looks like governance and oversight, the committee established by the IGA selects a single elected or management person. Have you guys discussed?
We haven't worked out, we'd have to enter into the agreement first and then we'd figure
Okay.
out, who does what.
I'm gonna make a real.
I was like, making, what my preference would be.
Why don't y'all work that out? And then, I was gonna say, hey, we could put it in one motion, but, we'll wait on that. So that's all I have. Appreciate it.
So good job, great presentation. I'm so happy actually that our other two partners have already initialed this and got it across their official line. And this has been a long time in the making, still a long way to go. I think some of the objective in our work is to make certain that Polk County is at the table on the governance side of this as we go forward, to make certain that there's opportunity for other jurisdictions, even though they didn't want to participate yet. And one for probably really good reason, one maybe not so much, but well, we want to leave the door cracked open for them and make certain that we're kind of there helping the other two jurisdictions realize that, this is a shared project and we need to make sure that the opportunity is there. Part of my hope is that as this goes on many years down the road, that we'll see more involvement at interties and shared emergency access for all of our communities. You would think that Monmouth and Independence are already there. They're not. They're close, but it'll get better as time goes on, I think. But for me, this is what county government is supposed to do. This is our job. And yes, it's an investment. And yes, we've deliberated over how that can happen in the past. I'm grateful that we've had some ARPA dollars to also help invest in some of this work as we've gone along. Austin has worked hard at getting every dollar he can over 20 years to, help with the study work and to make sure that we have a sound basis for this. I think I want to make certain to point out for the record that the beneficial use activity that we're promoting is regional. And unless we were doing a regional project, it would be very difficult to straight face and ask for federal or state money to help in the construction of this project going forward. It will be millions of dollars. And so the real benefit that we have in this partnership and this agreement is that we have a bona fide regional project with good sound science behind it. And I think that's one of the reasons why we can easily see that Monmouth and Independence both said, yeah, we need to do this. It makes sense for them going forward to look for the future. We've had a couple of very unsteady points in this process going forward about their permits and their uncertainty perhaps about where their permits where they were actually at and where they might mature. So that's been better clarified. And I think the whole system, what we're developing is pretty stable. Clearly, we've known, Austin knows it easily, what our requirements are for the current permit and what our opportunities are beyond the current permit going forward. And we had this little shakeup with a bill in the legislature this season about transfers. And though that's not completely put to bed yet, I think it will be. And at least give our jurisdictions some opportunity to still be able to make these kind of transfers. Because for us, again, we're registered as Social Security fishing hole, and that won't work for this intake. And so we will have to be able to make this transfer. Another issue outside the IGA, but I'm very proud of the work that Austin and the rest of the team have done, and our professionals that we have hired to help us get to this point. They've done an outstanding job. It's very complex work and it takes a lot of trust, relationship building, and everybody has to look each other in the eye and be honest. And we've had lots of those moments. So this is our time. And it's one of the things I pledged when I came on this board, that I'm going to focus on water. And this is a tiny step towards that bigger picture, that bigger win. So hopefully we'll stay steady on this with future boards.
Joe? I'll move to approve the attached IGA between the cities of Independence, Monmouth, and Polk County And I'd like to direct county council to review the IGA and prepare a final version for signature.
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
This is exciting. Awesome job.
Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passed unanimously. Thank you, Austin.
Thank you.
Good job. Next up is master fee schedule. Mr. Hanson.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, this is the annual master fee schedule proposal for the upcoming fiscal year. This is more for your review right now. It will be on the regular agenda on Wednesday, what is it, July 2nd? So, or 3rd.
That's the second.
Okay.
It's Wednesday.
Yeah, thank you. You will see that there are modifications throughout a number of departments. Some are minor, some are a little more major in the amount of increase in fees. And then there are a lot of new fees with certain departments. Assessor has some new fees that is being promoted. And the clerk does too. Sheriff has some new ones. Austin has the majority of the changes. Most of his are just a 4%, 4.5% increase in normal permit costs, which he's done for the last 4 or 5 years. And then any changes that the state have made are included in Austin's changes. The fair also increased significantly some of the charges associated with the larger buildings out there. Not really any changes to the smaller activities that occur out there, but rental of the main building and those things went up significantly. Do you have any questions? I'm happy to answer them today or until next Wednesday, when it's on the agenda for formal approval.
No questions now. I appreciate the updates to some of the fees and obviously we try to get as close to cost recovery as possible. To the general public and private sector, I'm less concerned, but you know, the kind of intergovernmental and those fees, which aren't many. Appreciate that. But
Yeah, I mean,
you know,
a lot of our fees, we are the only ones that can give out those fees. So there really isn't any competition from the private side. However, if you compare a lot of our fees to other surrounding counties, we are much lesser than any of those counties in almost every category.
that's what I mean. I want to be,
Yeah, so.
I don't know, generous is the word to the private sector and the
Right,
average property owner or customer, as you will.
right. But yeah, they're going up, but we're still well below surrounding counties. So we're still the best option in town.
Right.
Okay, so still time to argue. Do we have non-listed items?
Yes, Chair, I have a couple I'd like to point out today. First off, today is the first time traffic is rolling through 99W and Clark Corner Roundabout. Or north and south traffic, and the east side is open. The west side is still be closed as they do the connection and finish out that section of the roundabout. But it's a long time coming. I think you started this back in 2010, if I remember right.
Start fighting it.
Fighting it. Yeah, I sat with
No, I didn't start it. I started fighting it when I was campaigning for this job.
I sat with you at the Capitol building fighting it. Unfortunately, we don't have much say when ODOT has the right for the maintenance of our roads. So, but it is nice knowing that over all these years, we have something out there to save lives. And that's been my total focus since I've got here, safety and saving lives. Next up, I just want to recognize a Republican state congressmen and women who walked out yesterday to protect us from an outrageous tax increase. That is a very difficult thing for them to do. I served on the Maintenance and Operations Committee this last winter, looking at how we can raise funds to meet their shortfall. And one of my challenges that I've voiced several times was this isn't a one-way ticket. ODOT's got to take a look at itself and find out how to be more efficient with the funds that we give them and put more money on the ground rather than in coffers of engineers and study groups and moving forward. So hats off to them for protecting this. Hopefully that this will open up some dialogue to where we can find a common sense solution for us moving forward for our infrastructure. So thank you.
Godspeed for that reconstituted committee. Also want to mention Commissioner Mornhorst, I saw work being done at 51. So they're prepping for that westbound turn solution. Got that last night late, so they're working overnight. So well done on both of your advocacy there too. Roundabouts aren't that scary. When I grew up in Wisconsin, and it appeared overnight there were dozens. And it causes a bit of anxiety at first, but you get the flow after first or second or third try, and it works. And the one at Clow and 99, it's fairly long, large, single lane. It's pretty easy to navigate.
Just gas it. That's all you have to do. Get in it and gas it.
Yeah, I heard there's no speed limit with them though. You just get in and out as quickly as possible.
Don't quote me on that. Yeah. Being fun.
You're kidding.
I am kidding.
Of course.
Don't stop. That's the big thing.
Don't
Don't
panic.
stop. Update on building.
Sure. So the annex building at the Academy site is on track. We're doing well. We should actually be able to open the building up right around September 1. Basically taking over, moving things in as soon as the beginning of August. So we're in great shape. We have a new parking lot that's actually done, striped. We're waiting on landscaping now and things of that nature. The inside, there's still, the little things that we need to complete and take care of, but they're sitting in good shape. I meet with our landscape company tomorrow morning to look at the Academy grounds as a whole. So we're trying to address some things because if you go by there, you'll see the grass doesn't look great because we've had to have the water off this whole time. So with sounds of summer coming up, we need to try to get some water on the lawn and get it looking a little bit better.
Okay.
But I didn't know if we would stay on track. And the Woodburn construction, I give them credit. They've definitely stayed on track. Even with some of the changes that have come in, so and hiccups that we've hit, so we're in good shape.
On track, meaning on time and on budget, under budget?
Over
It
budget.
will be on time. It is not under budget, and it is somewhat over budget, but some of those were unforeseeable
Yeah.
changes, which always happens, and I don't care how long I've been doing it, it still gets on my nerves, and I don't like it.
This is the only one you have? Trying to think if you have any other major project.
No, we will be having another major project later this summer with re-roofing the Academy
Yeah.
building. But other than that, no.
Is that plan solidified?
No, our architect, not solidified, our architect is working on the plans, which should be done actually next week. We just sent something back to him. I guess today's Tuesday, yesterday, and get out to bid after that.
Yeah.
It's disappointing, but it's necessary.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else?
We're adopting the county budget tomorrow. So hopefully that all goes well. Resolution, everything's done in the modifications, so.
We'll be here.
Okay. If nothing else, we are adjourned.
What's the latest with that?